Okay, good evening, everyone.
Uh-huh.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'll start by saying a few words about non-duality and pass over to Dawn, then we'll see how it goes. Take questions and answers. So, sorry, I'm just checking my screen here. So, non-duality. The heart of non-duality, this is where I often start, is basically that there is no self. If we're talking about this phrase, seeing non-duality, what does that mean? The heart of that is to see that there is no person or there is no self. And this is a seeing which kind of challenges, may challenge, probably will challenge everything I've ever believed about myself, everything I've ever believed about the world. It's an experience which tends to make all the kind of assumptions that I've carried with me throughout my life, including a lot of unquestioned assumptions, just simply collapse. So we could say, if you like, that the kind of the normal state of being is a state of existing in what seems to be duality. Duality, of course, means two things. And those two things basically are myself and an external world, an apparent external world through which I move. That just seems to be like the natural reality for most of us, most of the time, or indeed all of the time, maybe. You know, it's sometimes called separation because it seems in what appears to be this natural state that I am separate from everyone and everything else. I have my own existence as an individual. That seems obvious. I'm a person. That seems obvious. And I move through an external world, mixing with other people who are equally separate. And huge numbers of stories build up around this. And I won't spend a lot of time on what these stories are at the moment, because it could take hours to describe them. But a few of the keys to these stories is that I'm an individual with free will. I'm an individual who can make choices about something called my life. I interact with other people and I can make choices about how those interactions go. It's quite likely, if I have a certain kind of mind, that I'll start asking questions about what is this thing that I seem to exist in the world about? What's my existence about? And it's quite likely that I'll either make up some stories about what this is about, or else I'll buy into one of the, if you like, off the peg stories, which are already provided for me. So I might decide that this is about, I don't know, pleasing the Christian God, or becoming enlightened on a Buddhist path. Or, I mean, I could sit here probably literally for an hour and list all the various different kinds of metaphysical and other stories that it's possible that I might use as the basis for what seems to be my separate existence. Now, if this collapses, the suggestion from here is that what I'm talking about can simply collapse. There can just be a collapse in which it's seen that this actually has no separate existence. That can be extremely shocking indeed, because everything that up to that point I may have believed in is suddenly seen to be, I'm going to use the word empty. Not false, which is a very harsh word, but simply empty, that it kind of has no bearing. So the seeing of non-duality, it can happen in many ways, it can be reported in many ways, but it's sort of a commonality is it can be a great shock. and it can really, if you like, destroy all sorts of beliefs and attitudes that this apparent person had about the world up to that moment. I think I'll stop there and see if you want to come in.
Well, just thinking of that word shock, in a way, yes, it's a shock, but it's also it's so natural and it's so grounded in a way, it's kind of not a shock at the same time. So it is just like stepping from one life into another in a sense. So for how I describe it would be it's basically the end of identification. So that all the energy that's kind of consumed in the mind is kind of released, and you really are where you just are. So it's just an energetic shift from identification, a visceral identification with the body, and the center of that identification, which is often the mind stream as well, just collapsing, so that there just is this free flow, and there's no separation between what's here and what's there. So it's just one thing, and the essence of which is love, and so that there's a sense of at homeness at all times that's just there, no matter what else is there. So yeah, it's a stepping into sanity, and it's the end of division and the end of identification. I think we've covered everything else. Yeah, I'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we'll move on then in that case, and we'll see if there are questions, comments, discussion, all the usual things. If there aren't, we have, I don't know if some of you might have seen this before, we have our hat of questions, which is a hat full of genuine questions that have been sort of, asked and sent in previous times. We might reach into that and see what's in there, but first we'll throw it open to discussion. I just want to check something first though with Louis, who's running this, because on my screen I put it on speaker view, and on my screen all I can see is your name in the center, Louis. So I'm presuming that that's okay. That's just something to do with the technology at my end.
I think so. Yeah, because I'm in speaker view. I'm just recording you. Just recording whoever's speaking, and yeah, as soon as someone asks a question, then they'll appear on the screen and they'll be recorded. There are some questions coming in through chat, and there's no one with hands up yet. So should we start with that?
Yeah, so you're getting the speaker up on your screen. That's great. Yeah, yes, to start with questions that are coming in, and we'll take it from there.
Okay. So one from Gigi: does non-duality guarantee happiness?
In one sense, non-duality is the end of suffering, because you're just here. So the mind has lost its grip in a sense. Suffering can appear, but there's nothing to cling on to that. So it tends to arise and fall away very, very quickly. Neurotic suffering tends to dissolve. So a ruminative thought stream tends to go. So it will be more of a reaction to what's appearing, rather than historical problems or fears of the future. They will be more transient, depending on the person, depending on the character and what's happened, their psychology, what's happened beforehand. But generally in the honeymoon period, during the honeymoon period, there'll be nothing. That tends to be, for most people, quite deep and quite, it can be complete death of the mind. So that there couldn't be the possibility of any kind of suffering, because, apart from physical pain maybe, but again, it's not neurotic. There's no fear of that, so that you just be in that. So it changes your relationship to suffering, I would say. So that, it's not enduring, and the fear is taken out of it. Fear still exists, but fear rather than anxiety, because anxiety doesn't have an object. Anxiety is, is more of a neurotic feeling than fear is actually of something. So it's much more in the present. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll just add to that. Yeah, I mean, non-duality does embrace everything, anything and everything. Everything is, if you like, and this isn't quite the right word to put it, but we could say, everything is part of the non-dual, if you like. But as a matter of practicality, I mean, I sort of talked to and exchanged emails and so forth with a lot of individuals. And as a matter of practicality, I think there are certain kinds of experience or feeling which are, at the very least, let's say, extremely unlikely to arise once separation has been seen through, once non-duality has been seen. And the obvious ones that come to me that people talk to me about is boredom, no more boredom, boredom gone. Loneliness is another one. No more loneliness, loneliness gone. And I think some people would also say, depression, no more depression, depression gone. So although non-duality, does obviously embrace everything, in practice, there are certain kinds of experiences and emotional experiences which are most unlikely to arise once non-separation has been seen. Yeah.
Which isn't to say, like, thinking of boredom, you can still sort of, I would use the term boredom, but it doesn't have that feeling. So I could, if I'm listening to something that's boring, I'll want to get away from that and do something else, but it just doesn't have that really, that horrible energy that it had before. So I guess because the relationship with time has changed, time is in the background, time is a thought stream. So the energy of that has changed. So in a way, because everything's happening at once, there's a relaxation into even what would have been boring, like hanging around or waiting or something like that. It can actually be quite absorbing and quite enjoyable. Unless you're in a hurry to get somewhere, hanging around to wait for something can actually be really pleasurable. So it's kind of interesting. But and lonely. There is a desire to go out and see friends and, to mix and stuff, but it's not that kind of yearning need to fulfill. But there is a kind of desire, I could say need, but in a very light sense to connect with others, I think, for me anyway.
I think it's quite, commonly reported, and certainly, I'd say this as well, that it's like there's, how can I put it? I suppose that satisfaction is much more easily attained, or is attained through much simpler things. So, I commonly talk to people, and there's a kind of trend towards living not necessarily, but very often living a kind of a simpler life. Because there's just a satisfaction in doing simpler things, the need for kind of very, exciting things may still be enjoyed, but the kind of need to have very exciting things to fill up time may reduce. So, there's a lot of reports of people getting a lot of pleasure from just sitting on benches and looking at the horizon. There's a kind of a tendency for a certain, satisfaction with quietness to take place. And one of the stories, many of you might have heard this before, but one of the stories that Tony tells is that somebody rang him up after this was seen and said, "Tony, I've been sitting in the garden for half an hour watching an ant crawl over a twig." So something very simple like that may become much more fascinating than it was before. And this may have something to do just with the quietening down, the natural quietening down of the mind.
And perception being altered as well, because it's much more vivid. Everything is much more vivid. And in fact, I would say it's transformed as well. So certainly for me, it was not the same sky after awakening as it was before, or not the same tree before as after. It is like a different dimension and just a supernatural, almost, a beauty and probably part to do with the absorption as well, and just seeing it without the mind is just incredible. But of course, over time, you get used to that as well. But initially, I would be walking around, my head sort of like this, and fascinated, absolutely fascinated, without the excitement that fascination normally has. It was just a very quiet, gentle fascination with everything.
Okay. I have quite a few questions in chat, and one person's got their hand up so far. Do you want to continue through chat a little bit for now, and then
we could go to Lulu if you like.
Sure.
Lulu's got.
I'll come back to those questions. So
yeah.
Bear with me.
Yeah, Lulu.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity.
Hi.
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 My question is, what is a forgiveness, and how do you forgive? Because when I try to forgive someone, it seems like the person is forgiving someone. But how do you do that?
Well, forgiveness to me is a psychological process. It's like you've got to get, if you really want to forgive and not bypass it, and because it's very easy for people to go straight to I forgive in a kind of cerebral sense. It's, to actually really meet the anger that's there and really deal with that, really express that to yourself or to a friend or whoever, and then get to the point where that's worked through, and then forgiveness tends to happen. There's a kind of, if you've really worked through it, there tends to be a letting go. But for me, it's there's a natural forgiveness that's there in the awakening, in the sense that no one is responsible, that no one's really doing anything, in a sense. But you have to go through the process. As far as, it's got nothing to do with a person being there or not. For me, it would be, don't forgive too early, because it's not real. It's not a real forgiveness for me, anyway. I don't know you.
Well, I'll throw in. I feel there are kind of two healthy rules for forgiveness. One is to remember that, if I forgive somebody, I'm doing it for me, not for them. In other words, I'm doing it to release myself from some entanglement with that person. I can be doing it for them as well if I'm feeling open-hearted, but essentially I like to think of forgiveness as a selfish act, and a very good for being that. Forgive somebody for yourself, for myself, because that frees me. And then the other thing I feel that helps, because you never know how the other person's going to react or what they might do in the future, is that I think we can give ourselves permission that forgiveness is always temporary. In other words, if we want to, at some point in the future, we can always take our forgiveness back if we feel that that's the wise thing to do. So if the person that we've forgiven looks like they, might harm us or hurt us again, take our forgiveness back. Because there are kind of dangerous people out there. It's good to protect ourselves against. So that's kind of from a sort of, I would say that's from a psychological and a therapeutic viewpoint rather than a non-dual viewpoint. From the non-dual viewpoint, I suppose all I can say is, well, an impulse to forgive will either happen or it won't. In spite of what I've just said, there will be an impulse to forgive, or there won't be, and then something will happen.
Because when I look at it from the non-dual point of view, it's there is no me here to give or forgive or get something. So that's why it was like, okay, let's assume I want to forgive someone. How do you forgive someone when there is no one here?
Well, there's never been anyone there. So just the same way, if this is seen or if it isn't seen, it makes no difference. I mean, in a way, I'm really not trying. I'm really not trivializing the question, because I think it is a very important question when it comes to sort of psychological health, really. But in a way, that last question that you've asked, it would be a bit like saying, well, how can I, I've got a fridge full of food. How can I choose what I'm going to have for supper when there's no one there? Well, a choice will happen. I will go to the fridge and a choice will happen. There's no one making that choice. There never is. As if it seems like I have a choice to forgive Mary for the intolerable wrong that she did me last week or whatever. Well, that will happen or it won't. It may seem like, here I am,
Okay,
that's good.
Well, not really. I mean, there's such a pressure on forgiveness. It's such a thing in these circles. And then there's such a taboo against the anger that actually is minimized. In a lot of cases, a lot of people are looking at that and minimizing their own suffering, whether it's a perceived person there or not. And actually that's what should be there. That's healthy and that's, worth addressing. And without that, it's meaningless, to say you forgive. It's just a bypass. So. Right.
Okay. That makes it clear. Thank you.
Yeah, don't get sucked into any kind of spiritual story that you've got to everyone and let them back into your life. There are dangerous people out there. It's much better to keep them at arm's length.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
I was talking about, seeing non-duality. It tends to blow apart lots of spiritual stories. And that is one of the spiritual stories. It might blow apart. Oh, I've got to be open-hearted and loving to everyone. And maybe that's not too wise with some people.
Yeah, that's what I've been kind of wondering how that works, because it just.
I mean, there are some people, the best thing to do is be as loving as you like towards them, but keep them out of your life.
Right.
Yeah, and adult love is always conditional. It just is, awake or not, it's conditional. Otherwise you're letting every psychopath, everyone into your life. So we have to be discerning, and that's what a lot of people don't learn as well, is discerning between who to let in and who to keep out, and so on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so no one else with their hand up right now, so I can go to some questions in chat. For Mike, is everything we experience what is longed for?
Me or you?
I don't know. Do you want to go?
Is everything that is experienced, is everything that is experienced what is longed for?
I'm not sure he's getting
it. Is everything we experience what is longed for? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to interpret that question to make sense of it, so I may not get it right, but the way I'm interpreting, I say no. In fact, I would say that, from a non-dual perspective, which is a silly phrase, but in terms of what we're talking about, what we long for, we can never know what it is that we're actually longing for until it's found. It's one of the kind of great paradoxes of non-duality, and also one of the great surprises when it's found, if you like. It turns out that whatever I thought I was longing for, what I was actually longing for was my own disappearance. And because my own disappearance can't possibly be imagined, I can't possibly actually be longing for it. It's a really weird paradox. So, I mean, I've had a long history on the spiritual path, as many people who've become involved with this have. And there was all sorts of things that I thought I was longing for, spiritual wisdom, spiritual love, whatever that is. I probably had some weird fantasies about what an enlightened person would be able to do, all the usual stuff. You flick your fingers and the gold-plated Cadillac appears, or whatever it might be. We might long for all sorts of things, wisdom. I might long for, to love everybody universally without the faintest possible idea of what that could really mean. And part of the shock of seeing this, I think, is that realization of, you know, it's unimaginable. That's part of the title of a book about non-duality that from a few years ago. I can't remember the whole. This is unimaginable and something else. Anyway, it is utterly unimaginable because no one can imagine their own disappearance. We're talking about the disappearance of the person who seems to be seeking. And I hope it kind of, maybe it's obvious or maybe it isn't obvious in the phrase, no one can imagine their own disappearance. Because when there's that disappearance, who could be imagining it? So I've lost, I think I have lost contact with whatever the question was I was answering, but I still feel that the answer to that is a no.
Yeah, there's just longing and the end of longing. But of course, I mean, yeah, I mean, desires obviously can still arise afterwards, but they will have lost their hold in a sense as well. It won't be that same sense of yearning. It will be very different. Yeah, so yeah, but in my own case, there wasn't this seeking, because I didn't. If there was, it was unconscious level because I didn't know. Wasn't aware of seeking for anything. So yeah,
that's worth commenting on, actually, if I can, because I came to this with a long history of 30 years of fairly conventional, well, and some unconventional spiritual seeking, but of course for other people it just explodes upon them with absolutely no prior warning whatsoever, no interest in it, nothing at all. It just suddenly it explodes on them because there really ain't any rules about this.
Okay, yeah, quite a few messages in chat, and Martin has his hand up, so I think I've asked him to unmute if he wants to jump in.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Pleased to be here. Hi. Forgive me for not sort of doing the camera, but I'm shy.
okay.
Anyway.
Yep. Thumbnail.
So I was just prompted to respond to the lady who was asking about forgiveness, and this often what I've got to say applies to many things. I think that from my readings and learnings, it's the wrong end. It's the wrong end of the stick. If instead one asks, who is it who wants to do the forgiving? Not how do I forgive this person, but who is it who wants to be doing the forgiving? A bit like Sri Ramana might do. Who is it who's doing the forgiving? And look at that, then it becomes very clear to just get on with it, whatever it is. How about that?
Well, I suppose that it doesn't really resonate with me so much. I mean, because whether there's someone there seeking forgiveness or not, forgiveness is something. It's still a process to be addressed. I mean, it doesn't make it go away just because there is no person.
I think the dealing with it is like I'm looking at one version of the direct path inquiry as is understood here, and it is to ask who wants to know, and who is the I that's bothered about this. And when one gets to the realization that the I that's bothered about this is whatever it is, that question no longer becomes that important.
Well, that's self-inquiry is a means to waking up. I mean, as I see it, but for me, it's just, that's a different thing to actually dealing with a situation where you want to forgive. It doesn't matter whether there's an I that can be located or not located.
Well, with respect, if one stays with the issue, one stays in the dual world.
One stays in the dual world.
If one entertains that issue, one stays with the dual world.
But again, it becomes very conceptual, like whether the thinker, the I, or the dual world, or the non-dual world, or whatever. There's an issue of forgiveness that you will look at or not look at. You know, to me,
again, I would say who's doing the looking? Isn't it just another more thoughts arising? And as your friend, colleague here, David, isn't it, says, you know, if it happens, it happens. You know, if we find ourselves doing a bit of forgiving or not, that can be seen to be going on, like going to the fridge, and it can be seen to be going on to get whatever you get out of the fridge.
Yes,
but, to actually pursue it is to pursue a maintaining of the stress that's involved in keeping dual questions going.
If there's no one there, there is no chance of that making the I continue, because the I is gone. So there's no one who's addressing forgiveness. There's no one.
So as Sri Ramana might have said, give up thoughts.
Ramana, well, go do that then. Good luck.
Good luck with that.
Not everybody who's awake can do that. Never mind people who aren't awake, right? And anyway, if the thought is there, it doesn't mean to say it's identified with. So thinking appears or thinking doesn't appear. It's the lack of identification with thought. Thought is useful for addressing things like this. If you have access to that, then good. You know, you can use that as a tool to looking at what you're suffering from. That's just what I'm saying. I you know, but fine if it works for you the other way. It's fine. I'm not massively into self-inquiry. I wasn't into that so much. But if that works for you, then good. Maybe the thinker and the forgiveness, the whole thing will dissolve, and I don't know. But
well, it does what it, as David says, it does what it does, and what happens happens. But in pursuing whatever pursuing means, non-dual being, getting to the nitty-gritty, as I've often read from people like Sri Ramana or Mr. Gadata, is, you know, who wants to know? Well, who am I, in fact? You know, and it's a whole different question. It's nothing to do with forgiveness. And then actually what comes out when realizing that one's true nature, as it's talked about, a whole different thing can happen. A whole different sort of forgiveness can happen with a capital F.
Well, I don't know how Ramana dealt with his issues of forgiveness. I don't know. He didn't apparently. But
anyway, that's my comment on that anyway.
Okay.
I mean,
question, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a couple of things. I mean, you know, some people get on with self-inquiry. I've met people who've got on with self-inquiry, whatever. I can make nothing of it. I certainly can't get on with it. I can make nothing of it. But you know, I'm not commenting on people who can. However, I mean, a part of me, you know, this isn't an evening about therapy, but a part of me, you know, I have a, you know, part of my head is a therapeutic head. And for me personally, you know, what you're saying, it would sound some warning bells for me, because I think it's very easy. I mean, you know, confronting issues with other people, and if forgiveness is in the frame, then almost certainly there's going to be some major issues there asking to be confronted with another person or some other people. And one of my problems with self-inquiry, and indeed other kinds of methods as well, is that they can be used to evade and avoid confrontations in our life. So I'm not saying that the person who goes down the road that you're suggesting is necessarily doing that, but if I, for example, I mean, here we're talking about non-duality. If I was in a different relationship with that person, if I was in a therapeutic relationship with them, or even simply in a relationship with them as, if you like, a loving friend, I would want to challenge them about that. I would want to say, well, fine, yeah, okay, go down that path if you want to, but can we check, are you actually really engaged with evading and avoiding a possible confrontation? That's really the only comment I mean, I'm not going to comment any further because I know nothing about, very little about self.
Yeah, understood.
That would be my problem with.
But you did say earlier, David.
Say what you're saying, Martin.
However, David, I think it is David, isn't it?
It's Richard, by the way, not
Sorry,
David.
Richard, I'm so sorry.
I was wondering who David was.
Yeah, Richard, sorry about that.
Maybe David is ghostly presence behind me. I don't know.
You did mention earlier that there's nobody there anyway. You talked about the nobody being there sort of type of thing.
Yeah.
And Asri Rahman, I think, when asked about, some other person or other, and I think another comment he made was, well, there are no other persons. There's only the one.
Solipsism. Well, that's not very helpful, is it? Because we have to negotiate with other apparent persons, in my view. But that's Ramana. I mean, well, it's funny. You can be so conditioned with this stuff as well. Like, life is actually just very ordinary. It's different in some very subtle ways. Like, it's experienced different viscerally, and the identification is gone, but you negotiate with other human beings, and problems will bubble up from time to time. And if you have that viewpoint, it's going to be quite difficult to deal with certain things. I would say, like, I'm probably quite biased because I'm a psychotherapist, but I know in my own experience, like, things need to be looked at and met and dealt with. Otherwise, they just hang around forever, So I don't know.
Are you a non-dual psychotherapist? Are you a non-dual psychotherapist?
I don't know what that means. I don't. What is a non-dual psychotherapist? Well, it means, I suppose, if that means anything, if somebody comes to me, like, talks about stuff from a non-dual perspective, I know where they're coming from, but it doesn't affect. I mean, someone who's awake might be able to recognize something and change very, very quickly, whereas it might take someone else longer. I mean, not necessarily though. So it doesn't really mean much, I think the main thing is that's if someone's awake, it's a good thing for them to be with someone who understands that and who does not pathologize that. And but really, the chainsaw. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, kettle chainsaw. But yeah, if you're into self-inquiry, I mean, it's cool. You're enjoying it. That's good. Good stuff. Like.
Thank you.
I mean, I just want to, I mean, in a way, everything you said, you quoted there from Ramana Maharshi about one. I mean, I could assent fully to all of that, and still, nevertheless, I may go out onto the street in an imaginary tomorrow and face some kind of confrontation with someone. And that confrontation might, could be handled well or badly, wisely or unwisely. The fact that I can assent to everything that Ramana said that you quoted doesn't make a difference to that. There's a character here, and there are apparent characters out there, and we interact. And some of that interaction may be difficult, may be confrontational, and that can be dealt with in different ways. And some of those ways are likely to be more positive, and some of them more negative. So I think that these things, still you know, they still have to be faced, let's say, just that, you know, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
We got,
Thank you.
okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. David's got a hand up.
David.
If we can unmute David, Lou.
How's that?
Great.
Oh, hi.
Have you got your mute on? David, can you unmute? Or Louis, can you unmute David?
Could hear you a minute ago. Can't hear.
You're muted, David. We can't hear.
Okay.
Great.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about Ramana, really, but I've some sympathy with Martin's position there. And one, it's not a problem, but we just, you know, in non-duality and discussing, we move in and out from so-called absolute to relative at a rate of knots, actually. And it is confusing because the answer to every question, the essential answer, it seems to me, is, as you started out saying, Richard, there is no one. And I think Martin was just trying to kind of underline that in a way, because then there is no one, and then suddenly we're pretending that somebody is going to the fridge to choose that meal, and maybe they should choose this instead of that, as in psychotherapy. You're right back in the world of cause and effect. And this isn't a criticism, but I have a sympathy with that kind of one size fits all kind of, well, fuck it, there's no one. That's it. It's the answer to every single question you're going to be asked tonight. And yet we'll talk around it forever about, you know, psychotherapy, blah, 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 conflict. We're right back in the real world there, which happens to be the world where there isn't anybody. So I can understand, I wouldn't say Martin was confused, but trying to, or, you know, or Ramana trying to make sense of it in that way, because it's unresolvable. I don't know if I'm speaking any sense here myself, but I have sympathy with it. The answer to everything is there's no one.
Can I ask you what the it is that's, like you said, it's unresolvable? Can I ask you what the it is that's unresolvable?
The business of, well, pre-awakening anyway, squaring the, I'm using, it sounds a bit Buddhist, it's not meant to, but it does cut to the chase, the absolute and the relative, and how they are both the same. And for someone that this hasn't arisen in, it's utterly inconceivable, it seems to me. So we move in and out of both. There is no one, but yeah, you know, if you go to the fridge, you'll find that there's cheese there that you might like that, actually, blah, blah, blah. Or you go out there and there's conflict, and it's very, very difficult to talk about. We know that. And you go round and round and round in circles. But the only way I can describe it is moving in and out of absolute and relative. You constantly, constantly. And it does do one's head in a little bit, or mine anyway. I might just be a wee bit thick.
I think my main experience of non-duality meetings, you know, when I first started going to them, was absolutely that. They really did my head in. But there was something about this head that absolutely adored that. So it kept on going back. But yeah, absolutely. For the head, this is impossible.
Sure, sure. But you know, when you start off by saying there is no one, there's nothing to say after that, really. Nothing.
Well, there is just this world. There is, you know, what do you want then? Just,
I mean, they're the same, aren't they? The absolute and the relative. This world, well, this relative world is also the absolute.
So I'm told, yes.
And
so you're told,
the conflict is still a conflict, whether anybody's having it or not having it. And I think it's just, I don't know, ideas around this just obscure the fact of the simplicity of it. It's not.
Yeah, but then when you talk about resolving conflict in kind of, you know, a forensic way and looking at this, that, and the next thing, you're well and truly into the notion of cause and effect. And we're thinking, wait a minute, there's no one. I know, I'm just trying to, you know, without patronizing Martin, just kind of flag up. I don't know. No, it makes sense in a way to ask who is, and I'm not really into, I've forgotten even what it's called, Romano's thing. But it makes, there's a kind of logic to it. There is, rather than, I must go and see so-and-so to sort out this. No, you don't. So I might not be making myself very clear, but it's, I think it's the permanent not a problem I have with it, but I can just empathize with that.
So you think cause and effect doesn't appear?
Do I think it doesn't appear? Well, it clearly does, and presumably to nobody.
Yeah.
But then that's just Ramana with knobs off.
What, he's in the fridge?
No, to say that it appears, but to nobody, you know.
Yeah, well, that's...
So I think we're being a wee bit hard on Ramana without knowing much about him, actually. It seems like a nice little kind of party trick to kind of deal with it somehow, you know. But that might just be me. But do you know what I mean about moving in and out of this?
See anywhere to move in or out of. For me, there's nowhere to move in and out of, and it's just all as relevant as any other. Like, you know,
if you're saying there's nobody, but then the issues have to be addressed, you've already made a huge move.
Actually, have is a bit too strong. There either will be, there'll be a desire for that, or there won't. You know, and
but
there'll be a lot of conditioning around this, like, oh, there's no one, therefore let's not address something because it's just arising, or you know, it can become a way of, you know, remaining stuck in a relative sense, you know.
But you're definitely expressing preferences there.
Oh
in
yeah.
terms of ways forward and maybe that's it. You know, maybe it is.
Is there a problem with expressing preferences? I mean, there's a hell of a lot of preferences here, believe me. I mean, ranging from preferences about what's in my fridge to preferences about kind of philosophical standpoints.
Yeah, but there's nobody.
That's true, and in nothing and for nobody, preferences still arise, and I think it's kind of, it's quite an I think it's one of the kind of really unhealthy streams in what I'm going to call spiritual thinking. And, you know, if we want to dig down into what that means, that's going to take an hour. So let's just take that as read. You know, I think there's quite an unhealthy stream that if I am a spiritual person, I mean, there's nothing about this message that's spiritual as far as I'm concerned, but it does get confused with that. I think there's a strong stream of thinking, if I am a spiritual person, then I should have no preferences. I should have arisen above preferences. And, you know, I think that's pretty unhealthy.
Yeah. No, but you can see why that's come about. I mean, if your opening line is there is no one, you can see why people would latch onto that and be all kinds of stuff bolted onto it. I mean, it's just human nature, really.
Yeah, because we have to trade here in words and ideas, because in a way that's not necessarily all we've got. Maybe there's energies as well, but that's kind of seems to be on the surface all we've got. We have to trade in words and ideas. So immediately we're into the world of division and duality. Yeah, that's inevitable. We're trying to talk about something that can't be talked about in a language which is definitely not designed to talk about it. Yeah,
that's right. And as I said, once you say there's nobody, there's actually nothing to say after that. And anything you do say is, well, as you know, Tony used to say, every word is a lie. I mean, it's true.
The life still matters. Like, I mean, it really does. Like,
sorry,
my life still matters. Like, it's
life.
not. Yeah, like, I mean, you know, what I want from life, where I'm going, you know, all desires, aversions, everything. It's just not. It's just the identity is shifted from that, because that's not, you know, it's not. That is not who I am ultimately. Not that there isn't an ultimate identity, certainly not here. There isn't, but so it's kind of freed up, but you're not free from the consequences of like your desires and your actions. Everything else continues to arise. It is altered by that in a sense, but it's still, you know, it's still there. I mean, the psychology is there, you know. Unless you're completely thought-free, which I was for the first couple of years. My thought comes and goes, but but even there, you will still have preferences and you will still have desires and stuff. So,
yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree with that. I just think maybe the problem is it's just impossible to talk about it anyway.
Cheese is good. Cheese is very good.
It's impossible to talk about, and yet some of us are drawn to talking about it. And one of the keys for this, I mean, I've said this often, you know, I mean, insofar as this is about anything, it's about freedom. And I love that quote. I often quote it, or I can't remember who it's from. There's something of the There's something of the wind of freedom blowing through Advaita. So, any attempt to put this in a box, and so, well, this is legitimate and that isn't, and this should be included in this and that shouldn't. I mean, there's something here that really
I know, but equally, and I'm finishing up now. I've been revisiting for my sins, actually, U.G. Krishnamurti's very traumatic stuff, actually.
Traumatic.
Not traumatic in some ways.
Dramatic or traumatic.
Traumatic, yeah.
Okay.
It can be very.
Yeah.
But maybe that's been the problem this week, actually. Because the notion that anybody could pass anything on to anybody else, or that you could look to anybody for any help in this, is, again, it might be very kind of absolutist, but it's just not going to happen. You're not Jesus, you're not the Buddha, you're not a psychotherapist. It's going to manifest in its own way for every single opponent.
Absolutely.
That's the starting point.
Yeah.
And I think, Dawn, as I think you said, memorably, I've only seen you speak once before, but you said something which really stuck with me, actually. Really stuck with me. And it sounds like a kind of throwaway line, but it just sent a shiver down my spine, actually. I think you said that, we move around from speaker to speaker or teacher to teacher, and usually it's going well, and God, that doesn't fit, and so it's on to the next one, blah, blah, blah. I'm paraphrasing here. And then you said, then you maybe reach the stage when you just say, fuck them all. and that, yeah.
But it's a fuck them all that drops into the body, man.
I have to say, it did for me. It poleaxed me, actually, because it's not, well, that's funny and a bit extreme, and oh dear. And I thought that was right on the button. The problem is it leaves us nowhere. And look, we're here to speak to each other tonight. So let's just go on with it. So I don't want to take up any more time, but thanks for your time anyway.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I do want to add, I think whatever the head says about this, the head will say lots of things about this, my head does, but whatever the head says about this is gloriously irrelevant, actually.
Cheers, bye.
Okay, so I've got some questions in chat. I've got quite a in-depth one from Rakesh. So,
hi, Rakesh.
Rakesh, yay, poor Rakesh.
It's often reported that when emotions arise after realization, they are experienced more fully, without filters, more raw and intense. But as they have no one to hold on to, them, they can often fade faster than before. Does that mean that the opposite is also possible, in the sense that an emotion that can be exaggerated or perpetuated by thought can also be seen as small and less intense than the sense of separation would make it seem, if that makes sense?
What are you saying, that there's an objective way of looking at this? I mean, my experience is not that they are experienced more intense, probably because mine were experienced very intense. So actually they're not as intense. You would say different, but I'm not sure what the last point was. Did you get that?
I haven't quite. No, I haven't quite. I have said that.
Like, is it? Because I got the sense you're saying, like, well, maybe it's not as, I don't know. Rakesh, can you not?
Yeah, I haven't quite got the point of that. It's not clear. Do you want to come in, Rakesh, and sort of unmute and talk to us directly, or not? Can you unmute Rakesh, Louis?
Yeah, sure. One sec.
Hi.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Good to see you both. Excuse my voice. Yeah, I guess I spoke to Tony once, and he said when anger arises, I think Dawn as well, you mentioned a similar thing. when sometimes if anger arises, it's just felt as like a hot flash in the body, and it just goes. So he said it feels more intense than it used to feel before, but it's really fast. And I was just wondering if like the opposite is possible, like if something that triggers me now that's actually not that big of a deal, but then my thoughts and stuff might exaggerate it and make it seem more intense than it initially does. After realization, if it's actually a lot easier to be like, oh, that's just a little frustration. There's no need to exaggerate that with thoughts and stuff.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess because there's more awareness there of the kind of internal process, I suppose. So yeah, maybe there's more sense of proportion, unless there's trauma there, in which case, you know, it's impossible to be objective about a traumatic, like or an emotional flashback, say. But yeah, normal kind of anger, yeah, sure. But again, you can't universalize about any of this stuff. If someone is a fight responder, and so basically any kind of conflict they go into with anger, you know, they get triggered with anger, that is probably unlikely to be changed. They will still be, and their anger will go on beyond the normal, probably after awakening as well, I would imagine. So it's not a one size fits all, this, but yeah, I think there's an ability to catch things much quicker and see that this is small stuff, or to drop it. In a sense, to drop it, there is a kind of, yeah, letting go, and also because the mind isn't compulsive as well. Well, here it's not compulsive, so you can kind of, right, enough of that. Or of course some people use that as a defense as well, the ability to turn away from a thought stream too. So that's probably complicated things. Really, like, I don't know, but yeah, I don't. But,
yeah, no. Sorry, yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, I'll just go back to sort of what you started with. Yeah, I think that you know, that basic thing that when this is seen, you know, whatever is going on that, you know, what might be an uncomfortable emotional level or whatever, yeah, it's likely to be more intense, and it's likely to hang around for less time, you know, just that. And it's likely maybe to have, you know, less cognitive content and more kind of visceral content. So, you know, anger, for example, you know, I mean, I make this distinction sometimes between what's called, you know, neurotic feelings. Sometimes some people call them, the distinction between neurotic feelings and kind of, you know, real feelings, or pseudo feelings and natural feelings. So like anger is a natural feeling in certain circumstances. It's just natural for the body, mind, organism to respond with anger, right? But something like irritation, that's a kind of neurotic anger response, because it's more in the head, it's more about the story. And the point about that kind of response is that it tends to be much more drawn out, much more troublesome, in the sense that it can go on for a long time. So for example, you know, irritation's a neurotic form of anger, you could say. It's a dampened down form of anger. And many of us may know people who can remain irritated for hours, days, weeks, months, or sometimes even years. Some of us may know someone who's been irritated pretty much continually for the last 15 years. It's very unlikely that you'll know anyone who's been angry unrelievedly for 15 years, because it would just be too tiring in a way. So there's something about the presence of the neurotic person that tends to kind of, you know, twist, I'll put it this way, twist feelings into a form where the body, mind, organism isn't able to process them particularly effectively. And there are all sorts of psychotherapeutic ways of attempting to deal with that. And all I can say about what we're talking about here, about, you know, the seeing of oneness, is that's a process which just tends to happen naturally. That when this is seen, There's something about the neurotic energy in the body which tends to dissipate, maybe all of it, maybe not all of it, but certainly a lot of it. And then just a kind of natural process whereby these feelings tend to process themselves in a healthier way and in a more natural way, rather than getting stuck neurotically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, and it sounds very handy if to have that sight, I guess.
I wonder if you're starting to are you letting go of things quite easily now? Then is that what you're experiencing?
It depends on the thing, but yeah, I mean, like for example, queuing for something for ages, that would be like an irritation, right?
Right.
And I guess before I would be like, oh, for fuck's sake, like, when is this queue gonna, when am I gonna get to the front, kind of thing. And now it's just like, well, there's no point even thinking about it, 'cause it's not going to change the time I'm going to wait in the queue. So it drops very quickly. But anger still very much so it's still anger still arises. So.
All right, is it okay?
And I'm sure it'll never stop, but it still lingers.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know, I just want to throw in, I know anger can obviously be experienced as a problem, but I would not want to say anything here that in any way illegitimized anger in itself, because, after all, anger is oneness being angry.
Mm.
Love is oneness expressing love. Anger is oneness expressing anger.
Yeah. I guess it's nice to, sometimes it's when I catch it and I'm like, is this irrational anger? Is this, worth thinking about? Then when it's easily seen as not, it's like you say, there's so much more clarity, and it's like, oh, actually you can deal with things so much easier. And then when it seems to like overtake, and then there's irrational reactions and stuff, so it's kind of like I don't know what I'm saying, but it's
yeah, but you got to be careful too. I mean, when you say something's irrational too, it's like a judgment, and you don't really know where that's coming from too, sometimes, because we have a history of anger as well. Like it can be relating to something else as well, can't it? So I don't know, we can be too dismissive of it as well. I mean, just don't be hard on yourself, I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, because sometimes you have a weird reaction to something that kind of makes sense when you look into it a bit, it's coming from elsewhere, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's something I'm trying to put into practice more and more, is not to be too hard on myself for being hard on myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kicking myself while I'm down, basically.
Yeah, it's a common one. We will, yeah.
There's a meme somewhere of it's a close-up of a child on a floor with someone's foot on his face, and it says before awakening, and then there's another shot and it's zoomed out and it says after awakening, and it turns out it's his own hand in a shoe on his face. Yeah, kind of, I like that one. Yeah, thanks guys.
For being hard on yourself is what's known in the trade as a secondary problem. The primary, for example, the primary problem is that I'm angry, and then the secondary problem might be I feel guilty because I am angry. Well, almost invariably, it's the secondary problems that are the hardest to deal with, that are the most kind of damaging psychologically. It's like saying the most damaging problems are the neurotic ones. So I'm angry. Well, so fucking what, I'm angry, bang, it's gone. I feel guilty because I'm angry, because I've just eaten a Buddhist book or something like that. You know, and you know, the anger lasted about 2 minutes maybe, but the guilt because I'm angry could last 3 days. So it's usually the neurotic problem that causes the real issue, you know.
Yeah.
Or the secondary problem. The primary problem usually, you know, if it can just flow through, it's usually pretty easy to deal with.
Yeah, makes sense.
So now actually you can have a tertiary problem. You can feel guilty about feeling guilty about your anger. And you can just go on piling neurosis on neurosis on neurosis if you want to.
Yeah. The mind can be a cunning architect.
Yes. The mind's a bastard, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Nice speaking to you, Bye.
Yeah, good to see you again. Yeah.
Yes.
Good to see you.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Hopefully.
Okay, I've got some questions in chat. So one from Gigi, could non-duality mean naivety?
Mean what? Sorry.
Naivety.
Naivety.
No.
No.
No. Why would it be not?
So it's likely.
Naivety means naivety. What? Like?
I'd say that seeing this is likely to disperse a lot of naivety.
Okay.
Meaning
From
anything from duality. It's beyond meaning, isn't it? Naivety's a mind thing. I don't know what I need more information.
Can I just throw in, naivety to me is connected to beliefs, for example, you know, naive beliefs. And again, seeing this can dispel a lot of beliefs. It might dispel all beliefs.
Okay. So one from is, if I pronounce this correctly, Isolde, I think that's right. Is the physical appearance of an apparent person real?
It's real and unreal. It's real by what we mean is real. There's what's appearing. That's what we mean by real. I mean, so it's real and unreal. So the whole thing of emptiness, form and emptiness, you know, it's just one thing. So yes, it's real and unreal, basically.
All phenomena are real and unreal.
Okay, this was actually a comment, not a question, from Jay. I think the book title they were trying to remember was this unimaginable and unavoidable by Guy Smith.
That's the one. Unimaginable and unavoidable. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay, question from Robert. Is it possible that after awakening, things appear brighter because there is no longer the overlay of meaning to the imaginary person?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. I mean, perception is intensified for sure. I guess, I mean, obviously that varies from person to person, but yeah, things can appear brighter. Yeah, sure. More vivid, more intricate. Yeah, there's absorption in that. Yeah, it's altered. The perception is altered very much. Well, it depends on the character to whom this happens as well. Using all the wrong terminology.
Okay, question from Mike. I'm new to your message, Richard. Is your message different to the Tony Parsons or Jim Newman style of message? They would say there is no one to forgive and there is no one to be forgiven.
Yeah, different speakers put this in different ways. I would say the message is the same, I'd say, but perhaps the delivery is different. I mean, the delivery is always different, obviously, from person to person.
Yeah, because it's true. There is no one to forgive and there's no one to... Yeah, but there is.
Yeah,
of course, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
But it's whether you stop there or not. I suppose you go into it, you know. But So what? Yeah, it's true.
Okay, from Nadine.
Included in
Oh,
this.
sorry.
Everything's included in this. But how different speakers apparently, notice the air quotations, apparently choose in air quotations, to speak about that varies, of course, from speaker to speaker, from their character, their personality, and so forth. Yeah.
Okay, from Nadine, could it be we come from oneness and are projected in consciousness to this material plane by experience separation, so we can hold both seemingly opposite truths? We are seemingly here, and where we come from, there is no one.
That's too metaphysical for me, so I'll ask you if you...
I know I do.
That sounds to me like a kind of charming metaphysical story. That's all I can say to that. Beyond that, I can't really make sense of it.
Yeah.
Okay, she also submitted another question, which is actually sort of two questions, I guess, related. What do you mean by awake? Are there not degrees to this?
Degrees to this?
Shall I say something while you're thinking?
Yeah, go on.
No, there are no degrees to this. I mean, there's plenty of stories out there that there are degrees, and these stories can become extremely complex. And if we get tangled up in them, we could spend 20 or 30 years in a school of enlightenment or something like that, where we are encouraged to believe that our consciousness is expanding from level to level to level to level. No.
Some people talk about depth after awakening, I suppose, but like the absence of thought or whatever. But anyway, that's another story as well. But I guess, yeah, if non-dual's been seen, if it's been seen, it's been seen. But yeah, some people seem to slide into it, so I guess that's kind of where the question was coming from. Maybe that somebody wouldn't know when that happened, if you know what I mean. Whereas with here, it was very, very clear that moment, kind of. Anyway.
And if you want to get into the levels of consciousness story, there's a hell of a lot of stuff out there that you can get into. I think I did a little bit of research on YouTube, and I mean, I may be out of date now, but I think the current thinking is there are something like 1,000 different levels of consciousness. Well, great, I mean, there's an entertainment for the next 40 years, getting through those 1,000 levels of consciousness. I mean, there's plenty of people out there on YouTube who'll...
I think Nadine's unmuted if she wants to add to that. Or...
Yeah, thank you. So it was just to kind of add clarity to my first question. I was just listening to the conversation about, it's quite complex to understand that we're here, but there's no one here. And is it not possible that we can hold to truths that on this material plane we are experiencing separation, but where we come from is oneness, so being both real and unreal?
Sorry, the sound is really difficult. We can't. Can you make out the question?
Not entirely.
I'm sorry, but the sound quality was very difficult there. Could you try again, Nadine? Hi, Nadine, can you unmute yourself and try again? Or Louis, can you unmute Nadine? Because the sound quality was, we couldn't get the question.
Hi, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, try again, Nadine. Better. Sorry about this, but try again, yeah.
That's okay. I was just, just listening to here, but actually there's no one. And so is it not possible that we can hold two truths, that where we come from is oneness, but while we're here, we're experiencing separation. So actually, like the comment, both real and unreal, we can hold to seemingly opposite truths.
Well, there's just oneness. I mean, it's not like when we're here, it's duality. It's only seemingly duality. I mean, it's just, so, you know, there's no, I don't know, it doesn't really, yeah. Or what would you say?
Well, I say it's a very charming story, and it's part of, you know, it's part of the spiritual story, many spiritual stories, that, you know, we have come from somewhere else, and perhaps that somewhere else is more pure than here, and we're here perhaps to learn and so forth. It's a, you know, it's a lovely story, but, you know, essentially there is just what there is. There is no other where that we have come from.
We
It's
don't
just
know.
this. There's just what's happening.
I would say we don't know. We really don't know what this is. So, you know, it's just, it's so mysterious. And yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's unknowable is a phrase that, you know, if you've been following kind of non-duality for a while, this is unknowable. Might be a phrase that you come across many times with many different speakers and in many books. You know, it's unknowable. But we can make up whatever story. I mean, partly because it's unknowable, it's so easy to make up any story we want to about, you know, what it is. But it's just essentially unknowable.
Okay, so I'm not sure if, so I'm just seeing if Nadine's muted or if that's it. Yeah, and Nadine, just put your hand up or send me a message if you want to follow up on that. Next is, sorry, just trying to make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, yeah, Mart's got his hand up, so.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, hi. Is the sound okay? Yeah,
It's okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just didn't have a specific question in my mind. I just wanted to, you know, talk a bit and see what comes out of the mind. But then, as you talked about that thing with the secondary problems, and I thought it's very interesting, although it's not necessarily a topic. It's not about non-duality, it's a therapeutic point of view, but it's very interesting that because really the so-called primary problem can be something very simple, and then when the mind comes with, as you said, guilt or something, or you know, I had the experience that, you know, I thought I should have done something, you know, and then I had this guilt that I did something wrong, and it paralyzed me like for years or something. So let's say this character is quite neurotic, but you know, it's really interesting that those so-called secondary problems can stay for a very long time. And yeah, but then if we talk about what is let's say perceived right now, then all of that you would say is just telling a story appearing in this, right? So
that last bit again.
Like any memory of anything that happened is just a retelling of a story that's just happening now, right? Like remembering, but it's not happening now, you know.
I don't know. I'd be curious about why you're feeling so much guilt, and is it to do?
Yeah. Sorry, what did you say? The last word?
like guilt, and if that's actually a real scenario, why you're feeling so much of it, and
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
because it might be something to do with how you are, and maybe you take responsibility for things too much. Maybe. I mean,
I
I'm just
think
saying,
so.
if I was sat with you, I'd want to know where that's coming from, because that's actually a lot. Like if it is what you're experiencing, that's quite a lot of suffering, and I wouldn't just.
It is.
It's just the story. That's a painful story. Like, and
it is also bodily painful, and don't go into that because that's my
yeah,
psychological problems. We don't have time for that, obviously. But I think it was very bad because for many I didn't treat it, or I didn't do anything with it. I'm just starting more now, so and I think I'm also more kind to myself than I used to be. But so
yeah.
we would talk about it, but the root is obviously my upbringing. It's quite clear to me. But yeah.
Don't minimize it. Don't push it down. Like, I mean, that's you know,
Yeah.
that's you know, you're really you've been suffering, like you really have. So don't try to.
Yeah.
Try to make it go away through non-duality. Like
No. I don't. I'm not doing it anymore. I might try in the past, but I think I'm more smart now. So I think I find some ways to work with it. Let's say therapeutically, but I am still more or less in the start of dealing with that. But yeah.
we didn't choose any of this shit, did we? You know, we didn't choose any of this. You know, what happens to us, and in a way, it's kind of innocent how it evolves, and you end up with this, you know, parent life, and with all the crap that comes with it and the good stuff. But yeah, like it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah. What I said wasn't meant to put down the parent suffering. I just wanted to put it into the context that I think that Richard would sort of agree that whenever I say about anything that happened in the past, it's just that it's a part of what's happening now is you know, remembering a story but it's just a memory, right? So maybe it's not also very healthy to hold on to it as if it's still happening, you know. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that, but
yeah.
Because again, you're pushing it away. Like just because it's a memory, it's if you're not actually looking at that, you're not going to escape the effects of it by that. It's still, no matter what way you look at it, it's still a mind thing. It still is. It's your past. It's like, you know, you're reducing it to a story. You know, time exists. I mean, we experience time. We live in time. We live in time. Time is in the timeless. You know, it's to say not is like, it's just ludicrous. It's experienced differently. But anyway.
Yeah. But I just think there are two viewpoints basically. That one is about the story and one is about, let's say, what's going on now. Yeah.
It's real. If the feeling is real in, I'm going to say, the now. If the feeling is real in the now, then it's real in the now.
Yeah. I think that's it. I probably don't have any more like
the only other
specific question.
The only other thing that comes to me, which is also like, you know, if this happens in the now, it happens in the now. But the only other thing that comes to me is be kind to yourself.
I would love to, but it's very hard sometimes.
Maybe it's possible to find some way to be kind to yourself.
Yeah, I'm actually trying for some time now, but it's sometimes hard because sometimes the mind is so convinced that I have to fulfill some, you know, something, and then sometimes but I think when I try, I find it gradually easier to be kind to myself, but it
maybe even just in some, if you're finding it very difficult, maybe just in some very small way,
right.
some way, maybe in a very small way, to be kind to yourself.
Yeah, because then the object of being kind to myself could, yes, I could turn it into another another weapon in a way. Again,
well, you know, most of us can turn anything into a way to torture ourselves.
Sure.
Be kind, no.
Maybe we could have a meeting in a week's time in which you could tell me how much you failed to be kind to yourself. I could punish you for that, but just that crap. And just stick with a simple thing. You know, if there's some small thing you enjoy doing, do it. You know.
Yeah. If there is enough time.
Please do it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Mark.
Bye.
Good luck.
Yeah. Have a nice rest of the evening.
Thanks, Chris.
You too.
Yeah.
Okay, a question in chat, follow up from Rakesh, and he's happy for me to read this out and then jump in if I guess anything's not clear or he wants to follow up. He says, Dawn mentioned some people can slide into this. To me, that sounds like when you're laughing with a friend while walking down a road, then suddenly looking back and realizing you walked to the end of the road without any memory of it. Would that analogy make sense? And if so, in that sudden looking back and realizing you slid into it, could there be some realization of realization in a sense? By no one, of course.
I don't know. I don't know. I never slid into it. I know I've never had that experience, but I don't know. Have you any?
I just want to say, Rakesh, I think maybe you're overthinking this. That's what comes to me. It's so, what we're talking about, it's so simple. I mean, it may not sound it, but it's so simple. The fact that it is ungraspable by the will of the apparent person makes no difference to the, I mean, you know, because it's like all these messages and communications, there's nothing I can do, it's ungraspable, it makes it sound very complicated. It's not. When this is seen, it's so simple. So yeah, I just felt like maybe you're overthinking it. Do you want to come in and say something to that?
Did you have that experience or something? I mean, where's that coming from anyway? That image, it's, I don't know, maybe. I wonder if you did.
No, I hear about this sliding into it, like other people have mentioned, you know, and just sounds like if it's so obvious, how it just sounds really hard to comprehend sliding into it, you know.
Well, maybe you're not putting words to it as well, because like when it happened to me, I didn't have any thought of non-duality. I mean, I had watched very little of that stuff and I didn't know. So in a sense, maybe I say it, you're just not thinking about it, you're experiencing it. And then in retrospect, you sort of think, oh God, I was, you know, there was something, it was already kind of the case, if you know what I mean. I don't know about whether it would seem like more and more percent, or somebody getting more and more glimpses. I don't know, the being and being thing that people talk about, because I've never experienced that, but I don't know. But I mean, because you know, until you own it and you sort of think about it, I think, you know, you can see the moment, or, you know, I didn't make much. I didn't, you know, I wasn't thinking, there was nothing to think, or when it happened here, like, except there was a wow, but that, I don't know, any.
Well, you see, you say if it's so obvious, it's not obvious till it's seen. In fact, it's whatever the opposite of obvious is. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible until it's seen. When it's seen, then suddenly it's obvious, which is maybe why the sound effect that perhaps comes to my mind, the sound effect in the background of somebody seeing this for the first time is, oh shit, what?
But
you know, the point for me of that is that as long as there seems to be somebody who is here who experiences themselves as seeking, it seems to me the answer, the solution, the finding, whatever you want to call it, has to be to do with me seeing something that I have so far failed to see. And it doesn't. It's got nothing to do with that. It's to do with the disappearance of the one who is looking. That's why the sound effect is, oh shit, or oh fuck, or bloody hell, or whatever. It's such a surprise.
it might actually not, you might actually not know that that's what's happened until it's talked about, and you may not know about non-duality and until you put words to that. You know, you will know something shifted, but for sure, and something good, but I don't know. I mean, that's...
Yeah, I'm talking from the, I mean, what I was saying there, I was talking from the, let's say, the perspective of what I call the self-conscious seeker. In other words, the one who's read the books and meditated and gone to meetings and so forth. You know, and of course, this can befall, this calamity can befall anyone, including someone who the word seeking means nothing to whatsoever, in which case then we're in the territory that Dawn's talking about there. Yeah.
But there might be doubt there in any case, in which case, you know, it might be a process of, you know, owning that, talking about it and realizing unequivocally, you know, because, you know, putting it into words, I don't know.
Cool. Yeah.
It's obvious when it's seen. It's a complete mystery until it's seen.
Cool. Thanks.
See ya.
See ya.
Okay, there's no questions in chat, and Jacob has his hand up.
Hang on, Louis. That name rings a bell. I'm not sure. I think, you know, if it's the Jacob we know, I don't want to have to deal with it. I'm sorry. We did have some communication about this. I've got to assume, I mean, I'm not sure from the photograph, okay. I have to assume that this is the Jacob we know from last time, and I'm just not prepared to deal with it. It's just such a waste of everybody's time. You know. Might be a nice different Jacob. What? Might be a different Jacob. Well, it might be. Well, your way. Do you want to take the risk? I mean, you're the co-host. So I'll leave it up to you. Have you got any more questions in chat to amuse us, Louis?
No, run out in chat.
You run out of chat?
For now, yeah.
Oh no, does anybody else want to come in then? Yeah. Well, it's up to you if you want to take the risk, or we could go to the hat of questions if you like.
I'm not taking responsibility.
Okay, well, if you're, it's up to you. But if the decision's down to me, I'm not taking that risk. No, I mean, we have been going for an hour and a half. We could. What do you think?
What, call it?
We could kind of call it. We could. I mean, it's, you know, it's nearly Christmas. We've been going for an hour and a half.
Like David, you got any more? Seeing you there. See you.
Let's go onto the gallery view here on my screen and see who's. Oh, most people have got their. Most people have got their cameras very wisely close, shut off. I'll go back to the speaker view there. Yeah, what do you think? We've had a good hour and a half. It's nearly Christmas. If anybody wants to jump in, now's the chance, either through the chat or online. I mean, or directly, but otherwise, perhaps we'll take a few minutes to sing some Christmas carols.
Carols be nice, yeah.
Maybe you know, have a cracker or two, put a party hat on, and Ah, here we go, David. We've got a hand up. Yes, David, come in. Bring David in if you can, Louis. You need to unmute yourself, or Louis needs to unmute you, one or the other, not sure which. Can't hear you yet, David.
Are you talking about me? It's not David, it's Martin.
Hi.
No,
Right.
I'm back.
oh, sorry, Martin.
Am I conflicting
David's
with
got
David?
a hand up, and I didn't see you. Sorry,
No,
Martin.
I had a hand up too. So,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
David's welcome to talk.
No, you go ahead, Martin. You've got the floor now.
Okay. Well, since you were requesting, you know, and a couple of things what you were saying just now about time, you know, well, again, you know, I don't know if I'm just or whatever, you know, the old one about there is only now, you know, it is only now anyway. So what the hell? There's only about, you know, it's Christmas, so have we done enough? You know, an hour and a half, you know, worrying about
yeah.
It's only now, so great, forever.
What's your point? Are you detecting?
We're bored. Is that what you're saying?
Are you detecting a contradiction there, Martin?
Well, look who's talking, ladies and gentlemen. I wouldn't want to be a paradoxical person by any means, would I now?
Well, this is all paradoxical. Yeah, there's just this. I mean, in a way, I tend to say this over and over again in meetings. So in a way, to say there's just this, there's no past, there's no future, there's just this, is in a way a very challenging thing to say. But in another way, it's just completely obvious, or as I like to say, it's bleeding obvious that there is just this. And in this, a story of time unfolds with a story of containing memories and thoughts about a future in which we may or may not end this meeting early and go to the fridge and choose cheese for supper. Yeah.
Since it's coming up to Christmas,
yeah.
As part of just this, as it were, what do you think? Would it be okay to mention or comment on the presence of love with a capital L in as or being just this? Love with a capital L. Just this is and is only and is nothing but love.
Yeah.
Well, you or me?
Well, yeah, that's just what's seen, isn't it? It's just love is the essence of what you are, and after awakenings is in the...
So I love you too. You're lovely people.
You don't know that. You don't know that. I like it. Yeah. But there is just an
benefit of the doubt. The part of the shock of seeing this, I would say, is, you know, it's the recognition of unconditional love, without a doubt. It's the recognition of unconditional love, and the recognition that can, you know, has nothing to do with me as an individual or as a person. It has nothing to do with who I think I am or could ever be. It simply is the case. That's really a huge part of the shock of seeing this, I would say.
So we're on the same page here then.
Maybe. As it's Christmas, let's say we are. Season of goodwill.
Yeah. With love, as it were, with love. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, by the way, though, I'll add a PS to that. I'll add a postscript to that, if I may. Sorry to interrupt you. Along with that, at that level of love with a capital L, and that being what is, could one throw into the mix? And this, in a way, is hinting back at that question about forgiveness too. Is there not compassion with a capital C?
Well, yeah, I mean, compassion is something that arises. Yeah, sure. Compassion is, yeah. I mean, compassion and empathy is for things that increase because the heart's opened anyway. So there's a natural compassion that arises because there's no separation, you know.
And finally, to add one more thing, with the love and the compassion with the capital L and the capital C, from what is happening in what is, there's also action with a capital A.
Action with a capital A. What the hell is that? Well, like, what do you mean?
It might be getting on with this forgiveness or going to the fridge.
Well, they actions happen. Yeah. I mean, you know, as the Buddha said, you know, actions there. I mean, this is again, you know, the heart of it, isn't it? Actions there are, but no doer thereof. So of course, actions happen. Yeah, and compassion. Yeah, part of unconditional love. I mean, in the tradition, you know, in the kind of, you know, Vedic tradition and so forth, which I'm not going to bang on about because I don't know a lot about, but nevertheless a little bit, you know, the nature of this total mystery which cannot be understood, you know, such as an anda, energy, consciousness and love. That's, if you like, that's the holy trinity of Advaita rather than the holy trinity of Christianity. Consciousness, energy, and love. So part of that, absolutely, yeah. What's seen is there is clearly there's kind of consciousness in a way. I don't want to go down that very road of that confusing word.
Yeah.
Forgiveness will be easier after the chi, for sure.
Yeah. Forgiveness on a full stomach. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's all lovely. Thank you for providing this platform for all these lovely swirling things to be going on.
I think you've already had the cheese.
From my point of view, there's a maximum of 18 minutes to go before I get to the fridge. So, hello, David, again.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I see you.
Yeah, I was just trying to pitch in with a view to finishing up there, actually, when you were pleading for some contributions. And it may not be relevant now. But it's the business of, again, in Yuji Krishnamurti's words, your job in life is to shut up. Now, you know, that's a wee bit extreme, but it's in there somewhere. Silence gets a bit of a bum press in non-duality sometimes. I think it's seen as a very kind of tree-huggy notion. But I wonder if you could just talk just a wee bit about silence and the best. Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
The best silence quote, to me, actually, the best quotes, non-dual quotes for me, no disrespect to yourselves, but they tend to come from the strangest places, pop music a lot, actually, artists sometimes. But Mark Rothko talked about the accuracy of silence.
The what of silence? Sorry,
the accuracy.
The accuracy of it?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's just a complete mind blower. I love it, but it might mean nothing to you at all.
Right,
I don't know. Because silence to me, I sort of think it, I mean, you know, with awakening, it's visible as well. It permeates everything. And then I think of silence of the mind as being a thing as well, you know, like the silent mind, which is sort of makes everything a little bit deeper. But silence is, I think, what lends beauty to everything. That's where the perfection comes from to me. It's just.
I think that's what he meant with respect to, you know, it's about the accuracy of silence, the perfection of, again, we're talking theoretically. I'm just a foot soldier here, you know. But to me, that comes very, very close to something. I'm not sure what it is, but for other people, it might mean nothing. That's words. But just interesting to hear you talk about silence for a few minutes.
It's a sacred as well. That I think that's it. It's just. It's almost like watching life in slow motion, but it's a visible and it's absorbing as hell. That's the beauty of it all. I mean, that is the awakeness. It's what for me it is. It's the stillness, and it's so absorbing. And even talking about it is absorbing. That's when love is seen. It's just particularly initially. I mean, that blows you away. That's just stillness. Yes, what we are. and it pervades everything. It's beautiful in nature. I love seeing that, because everything has just got that quality of beauty that you never knew about, or you read about, you thought is a thing, but it's not. It's, it's everything. Everything.
That's the emptiness, isn't it, really, I suppose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the emptiness and the fullness, because without it is the love, you know. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, shut up. There's nothing to say about
but do you know what I mean? If you mention silence in certain quarters, oh God, here we go, another tree hugger. I don't mean it in that way at all. Well, I don't know how I mean it, actually. But for me, conceptually at least, so you can forget it, it's important somehow, in a way that I can't put my finger on, just to dwell on it. Or I love the notion of the accuracy of it, I have to say. And then your job in life is to shut up, which sounds crazy, but
it makes sense.
It's pointing to the same thing in a way.
It makes sense in this moment when you mention it, and then suddenly just dropping into, because yeah, that's what it's about. And all this stuff is just noise, and
yes, but
it's beautiful too. But yeah, the most beautiful thing is just to drop into that and really, really absorb that, because
the noise is the silence, presumably. I mean,
yes.
That's how accurate it is.
Something I've said many, many times is that, again, part of the shock of seeing is, or what part of the seeing anyway, is that silence and noise are actually the same thing. And stillness and movement are the same thing. In other words, in noise there is silence, and in movement there is stillness. And so, even in the place which is most full of noise and full of movement, I like to give the example of Piccadilly Circus, for example. If you're in London, there is as much stillness and silence on a busy day in Piccadilly Circus as there is in the most holy Buddhist monastery.
Sure, and I'm an artist of sorts, but it's interesting just how much good art deals with exactly that, actually. You think of John Cage and people like that. The famous piano piece where the piano isn't played. Do you know that? The 4 minutes, 20 seconds? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, and he lifts up the lid, and of course what you hear is the audience coughing and people shuffling their feet and feeling a bit ill at ease. Point made, really. Rather beautiful, pointing to that notion.
Is your art informed by that then?
Yes, unfortunately.
Is it? All right, okay.
Well, no, it's informed by it, but it's not about it. I would never ever say that. But
it's probably from there, isn't it? I mean, because I bet do you paint, or is it?
No, I'm a photographer.
Photographer? Okay.
And yes, it definitely, initially it was intuitive. I didn't really realize what I was doing. And then looking back, I'm thinking, I should have given up then, actually. But now it's come together through just finding out more about non-duality and things like that. So it definitely is in that kind of territory, but it's not about that, I would say, hopefully.
Yeah, I know, but it isn't. It's because you're probably not there when you're photographing, right? If it's an art to you, it's probably.
No, I'm not. That's why I do it. But that's, I'd rather not do it, to be honest.
Really? Right, okay. But when you do it,
I would rather not have to do it.
Oh, right, okay. You probably still would do it, do you think, if you didn't have to do it, or not? Is that too hard to answer? I think
it's it's therapy for me, of keeping sane.
Oh, right, okay. So, okay.
Look, hey, join the club. It's why most artists, because for those few seconds, you're in that zone and you've gone.
Yeah,
You want it again and again and again. There's a lovely quote by someone called Ian Hamilton Finlay, who's a great conceptual artist, actually. Didn't believe in God or anything, but there's a lovely, I used to use it in lectures quite a lot, to open lectures, where he said that art was like trying to retrieve a pre-verbal state. And then God comes into it. He says, the interesting thing is that the work can make it, but the artist rarely does. So you just need it again. It's a hit of that absence of self, really.
Yeah.
And that's the curse of the artist in a way. But somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So,
yeah,
curse
so,
and a blessing.
Yeah.
sorry.
A curse and a blessing.
Very much so. Absolutely. No, I think on balance, yeah, I feel blessed, but it's lonesome. But life is. But the silence thing for me is just, it resonates somehow, and I think you've addressed it very well actually. So.
But if we're drawn to going into silence, you know, as a kind of formal thing, like we're drawn to a silent retreat or spending time in a
Yes.
monastery, great, wonderful, we're drawn to that. But you know, we can be driving on the motorway across the top of Birmingham past Wolverhampton with traffic whizzing all around us, and there is just as much silence there as anywhere else, and there is just as much stillness as well. Yeah.
But you can see in major religion, I mean, every major religion, not that I know much about these things, it is a strategy, isn't it? Somewhere, whether it's, you know, the Desert Fathers or God knows what, but this notion of silence and its importance, and Jesus disappearing for 40 days, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
And you can see, maybe it's just pure myth, but you can see why it's come about, I think.
Yeah.
And it's maybe kind of, you know, it's...
Well, stuff comes up in it, doesn't it? Like you're going to have stuff, unconscious stuff coming up in 40 days in the desert. You're going to get some visions, some weird shit going to happen.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, what occurred to me also is that, you know, when the person is there, if you like, you know, in other words, when this has not been seen, when the person's there, then in order to experience silence, I have to literally be in silence, in the desert, in the monastery, whatever. In order to be in stillness, I have to literally withdraw from activity, again, into the desert or into the monastery or whatever. But when the person's gone, then it's seen that there's actually no need for that withdrawal anymore, because, you know, whether I'm in the monastery or in the midst of activity in Piccadilly Circus, there is still silence and stillness in either case, and in either case and in every place, and in every place there is silence and stillness.
Yeah, it's interesting that in jazz, that old sort of 50s jazz expression of solid gone, you know, when people are improvising, you know, they're really taking off, you know, you're solid gone. it's the expression, you know. And just a final mention on the UG front, the book, I've read a few UG things, you know, the original dialogues and things, and it's all very interesting and quite, you know, classic in its own way. But one of his devotees wrote a book called Goner.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
have you read it?
It's upstairs.
Yeah.
It's
we have it here.
It's a scary read, actually. Yeah. I mean, it raises all kinds of amazing things, which they turn this whole thing inside out for all kinds of reasons. But it's called Goner. I think it was one of his favorite words. It's a beautiful word, isn't it?
He's a complex character, though. There's some things he says are like, what? You know,
completely off the scale. But that book, and the guy, the devotee, as it were, he's I'm just very, very intrigued by it. I read it when it first came out. I didn't think much of it. This time round, it's hitting me quite hard, actually.
It's I've read it. It's very moving. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for that.
Okay.
Bye for tonight. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks a lot as well.
Thank you.
Have you got anything else on chat there, Louis?
No, nothing on chat. Well, we've got 5 minutes.
Well, I think if anybody wants to jump in quickly, and otherwise we might start.
At night singing it.
Yeah, we might start the hymn, not the hymns, the carols. My choir has been closed down because of COVID, so I might really want to come in with some carols because I've not had my usual chance to sing them. So I suggest we finish quickly before that happens. You do not want to listen to my rendering of Silent Night. So, any last chance to leap in. Okay, well, should should we wind it up?
Yeah, why not? Wind
Yeah,
it up.
well, okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone for being here.
Yeah.
It's been, yeah, great.
Yeah, great to see you all.
Yeah, some old friends there. Good to see some old friends. We hope that maybe we might, some of us might be able to meet in person in the new year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. See you
throughout the whole meeting.
Thank you.
I wasn't able to speak.
Yeah, we
So
know.
the host just unmuted me just now.
Oh God, here we go.
What's going on? Sorry.
And you dare to speak about love and compassion. How dare you? You're a bunch of
Louis, could you
You're a
say
bunch
oh, thank you, Louis. You've managed to shut. If anybody doesn't understand what's going on here, our friend here has been a pretty difficult customer, not just in my previous meeting with Louis, but in other non-duality speakers as well. So we just felt the wisest thing for everybody's sanity was to keep him out of here. And I just want to thank Louis for doing a really good job on that. Thank you, Louis. I think maybe it's too dangerous to unmute everybody to say goodbye, because we're just going to get assaulted like that in the way that Jacob just tried to assault us. I heard enough of that to think, oh, I really don't want to hear any more. So thank you, everybody else. Thank you very much for being here. It's been an absolute delight.
Bye.
Okay, bye.